Welcome to orientation, everyone. Dr. Bird here, and this is the Big Idea Masterclass. I'm really excited, and that's because I truly believe that every single person needs to hear this message. And that's why I'm recording this class to help you understand the bigness of what upper cervical chiropractors actually do. Most people think upper cervical chiropractors can only help people with neck pain. And that's so false. What we're here to do is to promote health and longevity. And that's true healthcare. That's what we're interested in. And if I'm talking about the healthcare industry, then it's important to define what exactly that is. What is health? The truth is, most people were never taught what health is. Instead, and myself included, we were taught from a young age that medicine heals us. If you get a cold, you got to drink this. If you get a headache, you need to swallow this. But the truth is, you don't need a pill, potion, or lotion to be healthy because your body was designed to be healthy without any of that. Now, what are the first four letters in the word health? Heal, heal. Health is your body's ability to heal itself. And that's the big idea that chiropractic was founded on. And that's what healthcare is all about. Now, if the body was designed to heal itself, then why doesn't it at times? Why do people get chronic pain? Why do they get diagnoses and diseases? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about. But first, let's take a trip down memory lane, back in the womb where it all started. Now, in the beginning, there were two cells. You have the male cell and the female cell. And when these two cells joined, a bioelectrical infusion of life began. And that was you. And as these two cells multiply, you'll start to notice what looks like a raspberry. And that was your brain, the very first part of your body that was formed. Now, as the brain developed, all of a sudden, these fibers begin to grow down from your brain, and eventually they form a line. And of course, we call this line your spinal cord. And as your spinal cord developed, you'll start to see these fibers grow outward, which we call your nerves. And then at the ends of all your nerves, all of your organs began to form, right? Your thyroid, your heart, then your lungs, stomach, kidney, liver, adrenals. Your entire body was created from the direct connection from your brain. Now, your spinal cord and nerves act as highways through which healing messages are sent to the rest of your body. Now, that's how your body heals itself 24/7. Now, here's a question for you. How much of your brain's healing power do you want going to the rest of your body? How much of that power do you want going to your neck, your low back, your heart, lungs, thyroid? And the answer is all of it, 100% of it. How often? All the time, because that's what health is, 100% nerve energy from the brain powering your entire body. And that's why it's so important to keep the highways from the brain to the rest of the body open, clear, and aligned. And unfortunately, the reality is that we all live in gravity. And as great as gravity is, gravity can really create a lot of problems for our highway system for healing, right? The brain and the spinal cord. Now, the good news is that the start of our highway system is highly protected, right? The brain is completely protected by the skull. And there's no other part of your body that is completely surrounded by bone. Now, here's a question for you. If the brain is completely protected by bone, why isn't the spinal cord completely protected by bone? Why isn't there a long, hollow tube of bone around the spinal cord? Well, because then we couldn't move. So that's why we have 24 separate bones to protect the spinal cord. Now, because these bones are movable and separate, that means that they can misalign from one another and move out of their proper position. And this happens most commonly from the injuries throughout our lives, right? You think of all the sitting, the driving, lifting, falling, the sports, the car crashes, all the things we do from birth, kindergarten, high school, all the accidents and injuries can and will cause these spinal bones to misalign and jam up our highway system. And that's how you have to think of the human body, just like a highway system. What happens when there's a traffic jam on the highway? Well, fewer cars get through. It's no different with the body. Spinal misalignments put pressure on the nerves and the spinal cord. And what that does is restrict the amount of healing messages that can get from the brain to the rest of the body. So now the body is only healing at maybe 75% instead of what we want, 100%. Now, even though the spine has 24 bones, there's one bone in particular that is more special than any other bone. What is it? The atlas vertebra. Cervical vertebra, number one. It holds up the entire head, the entire brain. Now, why is the atlas so special? Well, because it's the door between your brain and your body. So it's essential that the atlas stays aligned more so than any other bone. Now, I can get into the science and all the anatomy and show you why the atlas is the most unique bone in the spine. And I can talk about how the atlas it's shaped different from all the others. There are no interlocking facet joints in the atlas like all the others. I can tell you there's no disc above or below the atlas, just like all the others. The muscles, ligaments that control the atlas are much, much smaller and delicate from all the others, but I like to keep it simple. Just imagine with me for just a second. I assume that the majority of people listening right now have been on at least one date before, some more than others, but I want you to think back to the time that you had a good date. And think of it like where your man, he picked you up in his convertible. And bear with me here. He took you out to a nice steak dinner, very romantic. Now, after dinner, you drove to the movies. Yeah, you laughed and smiled. And when you got home, he walked you up to your front door. You're holding hands, staring deep into each other's eyes. And at this point, you're both feeling pretty good. Your hearts are beating a little bit faster, and you could tell just by looking in his eyes that he was going to lean in and give you a kiss. But easy now. Now, this is the first date. He's going to take it slow. He's going to go for the cheek, right? That's safe. And so he leans in. You both close your eyes, and guess what happens? He trips over your shoe, and instead of kissing you here on the cheek, he kisses you right here beneath your earlobe. Now, is that sending the same message? Is the bottom of the cheek the same as the bottom of the earlobe? Come on, it's only a difference of what? Maybe 2 inches? Why is that a different message? Well, because your body intuitively knows that the cheek is public and the upper neck is private. And your body will subconsciously protect itself by drawing an emotional reaction when this part of your body is stimulated. And whether that's stimulated positively in a romantic sense or stimulated negatively in more of a guarded sense. And that's really the point of all this. And I have another question for you. Where does the atlas bone sit? It's right beneath your earlobe. So this is how your body knows that the atlas is the most important bone in your entire body. Now, the problem is that the atlas only weighs 2 ounces. And how much does the head weigh? The average head weighs 11 pounds. So if we have a 2 ounce bone supporting an 11-pound head, does that seem very stable? No. And so we have the most important part of the body, the atlas, but it also is the most vulnerable and prone to injury. And this is why when people or when you injure your head and neck, the atlas will always be the first to slip out and misalign. Now, why does this matter? So, what if the atlas misaligns? Well, let's talk about it. So, where are my Superman fans here? Do you remember Christopher Reeve? Now, for those that don't know, he was the star actor in the first four Superman movies. Great actor. And what happened to him? Why wasn't there a Superman 5? Well, unfortunately, after Superman 4, he was riding his horse one day, and in an instant, he was thrown off his horse and he broke and dislocated his upper cervical vertebra, and that completely paralyzed him from the neck down. Yeah, it's a sad story. And he died 10 years later. And why do I share this story? Well, it puts into perspective the gravity of how important the upper neck is and how important it is in controlling the entire body. And so, what you need to understand is whether the atlas dislocates on a major scale, like Superman, or if it misaligns on a smaller scale, like all of us, regardless, you will still see full body effects with both. Now, a simple misalignment may not result in full body paralysis, but it will result in full body dysfunction. And it can be brain dysfunction, heart dysfunction, weaker lungs, thyroid, neck and back pain, muscle, joint, nerve pain, headache, migraine, vertigo, dizziness, hormone imbalances, right? The list goes on. And so, to better help you understand this concept, I'm going to share a few examples, right? Number one, we have the breaker box inside your house. Now, if the breaker box is dysfunctional, what's going to happen to the lighting throughout the rest of the house? Well, the lights won't work properly. And if all the lights in your house are flickering, what are you going to fix first? The breaker box. And so if you start fixing all the light bulbs individually without addressing the breaker box, well, you're going to be wasting a lot of time and a lot of money because you'll have to continue replacing these lights. Now, what if I told you that the Atlas is the breaker box inside of your body? Well, it is. All right, number two, think of a rubber band wrapped tightly around the wrist. What's going to happen to all the fingers? All five of them. They're all going to turn white. They might go numb. And so you can see you'd be wasting a lot of time treating all five fingers separately when the smart decision would be to simply just take off the rubber band first. And so that's what we're talking about here with the atlas. Think of the atlas as the rubber band in this example. We want to correct the atlas first and then watch the rest of the body heal itself. Simple. All right, number three, let's say that I mail a letter from California all the way across to Florida. And let's say after 2 weeks, that letter never arrived in Florida. So who do I blame? Do I blame the post office in Florida? Well, I could. They didn't get the letter. It was never received, so it must be their fault. But what if it wasn't their fault? And how would I know whose fault it is? Well, first, I would want to make sure that letter was sent in the first place, right? I get the tracking number. And then two, I would want to track that letter and make sure it made it to its first checkpoint. Let's say Texas. And I would really want to follow that letter from California all the way over to Florida. And doesn't that make logical sense? To look for the problem at the start. And it really does make logical sense because if someone is experiencing a problem throughout their body, we'd want to start looking at things where the messages are sent in the first place. And so that's the brain and the atlas. You got to look there. And unfortunately, that's not how most traditional doctors operate. If you have a heart problem, what does the cardiologist say? Well, miss, it's clearly a problem with your heart. Look at these heart tests. Your heart is underperforming. Here's some pills. And that's just insane because what if it's not the heart's fault? What if the heart signal was being jammed up somewhere in the neck and then the heart became dysfunctional years later and it couldn't heal itself? Well, this is why it's important to address the atlas misalignment first. And it's important to do it earlier in your life rather than later because the longer the atlas stays misaligned, the more full body health problems will show up. And guess who diagnoses them? The traditional doctor. And what do they blame? Your age. Mary, you're just getting older. This is normal for your age. Here are some pills. And, the most common that I see is inflammation and arthritis in folks. And doctors just tell you you're aging. That's not how it is because the real answer is the atlas has been misaligned for too long. And the longer it stays out of alignment, the more inflammation your body will send. And if that happens for 20, 30 years, then the more arthritis your body will send because that's stronger than inflammation. Bone calcium stronger than inflammation, which is tissues and proteins. But all of this is connected to the atlas and the spine being misaligned. Now, fortunately, this problem can be corrected. And that's my job as an atlas specialist to one, figure out exactly how it's misaligned, and then two, figure out exactly how to realign it. You deserve that. Your body was designed to heal itself, and it all starts with keeping the atlas aligned and keeping that door open between the brain and the body. I'm telling you, this world would be a better place if everyone's atlases were aligned. People would absolutely be healthier. They would miss work less. They would be happier and on vacation. They would wake up in the morning with less pain, and they would really start their day right. And of course, there would be less disease. But that's the big idea of what we do. And I love it. And I personally plan on correcting atlases forever because I've seen the results when people live their life in alignment. And I also see the results when people live their life misaligned their entire time. And, why would someone leave their atlas out of alignment? Why would you leave yours out? And it's because you didn't know. Nobody shared with you the importance of why the atlas matters. Most people have no idea that their atlas is misaligned. They have no idea how it's affecting their problems. And unfortunately, they're going through the medical merry-go-round, relying on pills to solve their problem. And so that's why I'm taking the time right now to teach you about this because I need your help. There's so many people that desperately need our help. And so that's what this is about. Here's to getting these people help. Here's to getting them off pills or taking fewer pills so that they can live happier, healthier lives without the pain. Here we go.